France did not enter World War II as a confident nation. It entered as a survivor. To understand why France fell so fast in 1940, you must return not to tanks or generals, but to memory. To a war that had ended only 20 years earlier, yet never truly left the French mind. Between 1914 and 1918, France lost nearly 1.4 million people. Entire villages vanished. A generation of young men disappeared into the mud of Verdun and the Somme. Almost every family carried grief. Almost every town carried scars. Victory had come, but it felt indistinguishable from catastrophe. The land itself remembered. Fields still hid unexploded shells. Forests were shaped by craters. Graveyards stretched farther than city blocks. For France, World War I was not a triumph, it was a warning. And that warning shaped everything that followed. After 1918, French military planners asked only one question: how do we survive the next war? Not how do we win it, not how do we move faster, but how to ensure that France would never bleed like this again. The answer they chose was defense. France believed the next war would look like the last one: slow, grinding, positional. A war of attrition. A war where holding ground mattered more than movement. And so the nation committed itself to an idea that felt rational, humane, and safe. Never allow the enemy inside France again. This was not cowardice, it was trauma. A whole generation of French generals had fought in trenches. They had learned their lessons in mud and blood. They trusted concrete more than speed, barbed wire more than boldness. They feared chaos more than defeat. So France invested in fortresses instead of flexibility, in certainty instead of imagination. By the 1930s, French military doctrine had become cautious, centralized, and rigid. Orders flowed downward slowly. Initiative was discouraged. Officers were trained to wait, not adapt. The system prized control because control felt like safety. But war was changing. Germany studied World War I and reached a different conclusion. Where France saw endurance, Germany saw stagnation. Where France saw protection, Germany saw paralysis. And while France prepared for a war of memory, Germany prepared for a war of motion. Yet inside France, few wanted to hear this. Politically, the country was fractured. Governments collapsed rapidly. Strikes, protests, and ideological battles filled the streets. The scars of war had produced not unity, but exhaustion. The national mood was defensive, suspicious, inward-looking. Never again was not just a slogan, it was a strategy. Even as intelligence reports warned of German innovation, concentrated armor, radio coordination, speed, French planners dismissed them as reckless, dangerous, unrealistic. After all, hadn't Germany lost the last war trying bold offensives? France believed time favored the defender. France believed depth and preparation would compensate for speed. France believed it could absorb the shock again. But there was a fatal flaw in this thinking. Trauma teaches you how to survive the last disaster, not the next one. By 1939, France possessed one of the largest armies on Earth. Its soldiers were brave, its equipment was formidable, but its mindset was frozen in the past. The army was built to endure pressure, not respond to surprise. When war finally came, France was ready for trenches that would never be dug, for battles that would never be fought, for a war that existed only in memory. And when the first German tanks moved, not slowly, not predictably, but with terrifying speed, France discovered something devastating. The war it had prepared for was not the war it was about to fight. It stretched for miles beneath the soil of eastern France. Steel, concrete, and certainty buried deep in the earth. The Maginot Line was not a symbol of fear, it was a promise. A promise that France would never again watch enemy boots march through its towns. A promise written in reinforced concrete, armored turrets, and underground cities built to survive artillery fire that had once turned entire landscapes into graveyards. To the French public, the Maginot Line was invincibility made visible. To politicians, it was reassurance. To generals shaped by World War I, it was logic. And in many ways, it worked. The Maginot Line was technologically advanced, expertly engineered, and nearly impossible to breach head-on. Its guns covered kill zones with devastating precision. Its soldiers could live underground for weeks. Against a frontal assault, it was formidable. But the myth was never that it was strong. The myth was that it was enough. The Maginot Line was designed to block Germany long enough for France to mobilize. It was meant to channel the enemy into Belgium, where French and Allied forces would meet them in open battle, just as they had in 1914. On paper, it was sound, calculated, rational. What it could not do was think. What it could not do was move. And slowly, almost invisibly, the line changed French thinking. Defense became habit, habit became doctrine, doctrine became identity. The existence of the fortifications encouraged a dangerous assumption that the front was known, fixed, predictable. The concrete did not fail France. France failed by trusting concrete more than change. As money poured into fortresses, flexibility drained from strategy. Mobile reserves were underdeveloped. Armored units were scattered instead of concentrated. Commanders planned wars as if geography itself were immutable. The line ended at the Belgian border, not because France forgot, but because politics intervened. Belgium declared neutrality, and France respected it, assuming the real battle would begin there. What lay beyond, the Ardennes forest, was dismissed as naturally secure. Dense woods, narrow roads, impassable terrain. A belief hardened. No modern army could push armor through there. Germany saw an invitation. While French engineers poured concrete into the ground, German planners poured imagination into movement. They did not plan to break the Maginot Line. They planned to ignore it, to turn France's greatest strength into an irrelevant monument. When German forces attacked in May 1940, French soldiers inside the Maginot Line waited for the impact that never came. Their guns were loaded, their defenses intact, their enemy elsewhere. German armored columns surged through the Ardennes, fast, concentrated, coordinated by radio. The fortress line, designed to protect France, suddenly protected nothing at all. It stood unmoved as the war raced past it. The Maginot Line did not collapse, it was bypassed, outflanked, rendered obsolete in real time. And in that moment, the illusion shattered. France had built a wall against invasion, but not against adaptation. It had prepared for pressure, not speed, for certainty, not surprise. The Maginot Line remains today, silent, intact, and haunting, not as a monument to foolishness, but as a warning written in concrete. No defense, no matter how strong, can protect a nation that mistakes preparation for understanding.
Armies do not collapse when soldiers stop fighting. They collapse when decisions stop moving. In 1940, France did not lack courage. It lacked coherence. At the top of the French army stood men shaped by a different century, veterans of the trenches, survivors of Verdun, officers who had learned command in a war where patience mattered more than speed, and endurance mattered more than initiative. Their authority was unquestioned, but their world was already gone. The French high command was rigid, centralized, and painfully slow. Orders flowed from Paris through layers of bureaucracy, each step demanding confirmation, approval, and procedure. Initiative at lower levels was discouraged. Obedience was prized over improvisation. In theory, this ensured control. In practice, it ensured paralysis. German commanders operated under a different philosophy. Their officers were trained to act independently, to exploit opportunity, to move without waiting for permission. Radios crackled with constant communication. Decisions were made in minutes, not days. France still fought on paper. When the German offensive began, French intelligence reported alarming movements, armored concentrations, rapid advances, unexpected breakthroughs. But these reports collided with doctrine. They contradicted expectations, and so they were questioned, delayed, or dismissed. To change plans would mean admitting uncertainty. Uncertainty felt like chaos. Chaos was what France feared most. Inside French headquarters, maps were redrawn too late. Orders were revised after the moment had passed. Units waited for instructions that never arrived. When permission finally came, the battlefield had already moved on. Even France's tanks, some of the most powerful in the world, were victims of command failure. They were scattered across infantry units, used as mobile bunkers instead of decisive weapons. Concentration was avoided, independence was restricted, speed was sacrificed for control. Germany concentrated its armor. France diluted its strength. The result was not just tactical defeat, but psychological shock. As German units advanced faster than French commanders believed possible, disbelief spread through the ranks. Reports sounded exaggerated, impossible, surely a mistake. But the truth was racing forward on treads and tracks, indifferent to hierarchy. The high command struggled to accept reality unfolding outside its assumptions, and as confidence eroded at the top, it collapsed below. Soldiers fought bravely, but blindly, without clear objectives, without reliable information, without faith that someone, somewhere, still understood the war. In battle, confusion is contagious. When leaders hesitate, panic fills the silence. By the time the French command grasped the scale of the crisis, the window to respond had closed. The enemy was no longer at the frontier, it was behind them. Communications were fractured, retreats became routes. Control dissolved into survival. France's defeat was not caused by cowardice, it was caused by a system that could not move fast enough to confront reality. A high command designed to prevent disaster had become incapable of responding to it. And in modern war, hesitation is fatal. The tragedy is not that France's leaders were incompetent, but that they were too certain, too anchored to lessons learned in a previous catastrophe, too confident that the next war would obey the same rules. But history does not repeat itself politely. It adapts. And when the war demanded speed, flexibility, and imagination, France's high command offered caution, procedure, and delay. By the time certainty cracked, France was already falling.
What Germany attempted in May 1940 was not simply an attack. It was a bet against French belief. For decades, the Ardennes forest had been dismissed as a natural barrier. Dense woods, narrow roads, steep valleys. French military doctrine labeled it impassable to modern armored forces. Maps marked it as low risk. Units stationed there were under-strength, under-prepared, and under-prioritized. The Ardennes was where France felt safe. German planners knew this. While Allied attention focused north toward Belgium, German armored divisions quietly assembled opposite the forest. Tanks idled beneath trees, columns waited in silence. The plan was audacious. Force thousands of vehicles through terrain the enemy believed could not be crossed, and do it faster than anyone thought possible. If it failed, Germany would lose the war in weeks. If it succeeded, France would lose it in days. On May 10, 1940, the gamble began. As German forces surged into Belgium and the Netherlands exactly as expected, Allied and French armies moved forward to meet them. This was the war France had prepared for, the familiar war, the war of memory. Behind them, through the Ardennes, something unseen was moving,
German engineers cleared roads at night. Traffic jams stretched for miles. Tanks packed bumper to bumper along winding forest paths. A single air attack could have destroyed the entire operation, but the skies remained quiet. French reconnaissance failed to grasp the scale of what was unfolding. Warnings came. Some officers sounded the alarm. A few reports mentioned large armored formations, but doctrine resisted belief. The idea itself seemed absurd. Tanks don't move through the Ardennes. Not like this. Not in numbers. On May 13th, German forces reached the Meuse River near Sedan. There, the illusion collapsed. French defenses at Sedan were thin, manned largely by reserve units. When German aircraft struck, not with precision bombing, but relentless psychological pressure, the defenders broke. Panic spread, positions were abandoned, and once the Germans crossed the river, the breach widened with terrifying speed. Within hours, armored divisions poured through the gap. What followed was not a battle, it was disorientation. German tanks did not pause to secure flanks. They did not wait for infantry. They drove west, cutting communication lines, isolating units, severing command. Speed replaced caution. Momentum replaced doctrine. French commanders searched maps for a front that no longer existed. Orders issued in the morning were obsolete by afternoon. Units sent to counterattack arrived too late, or not at all. Roads clogged with refugees fleeing the advancing columns. Military movement slowed to a crawl as civilian panic flooded the rear. The Ardennes breakthrough was not just physical, it was psychological. The French army had been outmaneuvered in the realm it trusted most, its assumptions. The belief that nature itself would protect them had been weaponized against them. By the time the full scale of the breakthrough was understood, German forces were already racing toward the Channel. Allied armies in Belgium were being encircled. The campaign had turned into a trap, and it had sprung perfectly. France had prepared to absorb pressure. Germany applied speed. France expected resistance to be gradual. Germany made it catastrophic. The Ardennes gamble shattered the illusion of control. It exposed the fatal weakness beneath French strategy, not lack of strength, but lack of imagination. A forest France believed would slow the enemy became the highway of its defeat. And once the enemy was behind them, moving faster than orders could follow, the outcome was no longer in doubt. The war France had planned for was over. The war Germany had envisioned was already won.
France did not collapse in a single moment. It unraveled. By June 1940, the front lines no longer made sense. German armored columns were behind French positions, beside them, sometimes nowhere on the maps at all. Communication failed. Orders contradicted each other. Units marched toward battles that had already ended. And everywhere, civilians were fleeing. Millions poured onto the roads, families carrying what they could, carts and bicycles mixed with retreating soldiers. The countryside dissolved into chaos. Military convoys stalled behind refugees. Discipline weakened. Panic spread faster than any tank. Paris was declared an open city. The capital of France, symbol of revolution and endurance, was abandoned without a fight. Government offices emptied, files were burned, ministers fled south, carrying the weight of a nation in motion. This was not just a military defeat, it was a political crisis, unfolding in real time. Inside the government, arguments raged. One camp believed France must continue the war, fight from the colonies if necessary, alongside Britain. The empire still stood. The navy was intact. Millions of soldiers remained under arms. Another camp feared something else entirely: civil collapse. Marshal Philippe Pétain, hero of Verdun, spoke not of victory, but of order, of protecting civilians, of ending suffering. He warned that continued resistance would tear France apart. that chaos would destroy what the war had not. His voice carried authority. His words carried fear. Prime Minister Paul Reynaud wavered. The cabinet fractured. Each hour brought worse news from the front. German forces advanced relentlessly. The image of France, stable, unified, controlled, was dissolving. On June 16th, Reynaud resigned. The next day, Pétain announced that France would seek an armistice. To some, it was betrayal. To others, it was mercy. The decision was not made in a vacuum. It was shaped by trauma, by the memory of 1914 to 1918, by fear of urban destruction, by the belief that the nation itself might not survive another total war fought on its own soil. But there was another truth, quieter and harder to face. France surrendered while it still had options. The fleet had not been destroyed. The colonies remained loyal. Britain urged resistance. A different path existed, uncertain, costly, but possible. Instead, France chose certainty. On June 22, 1940, the armistice was signed in the same railway carriage where Germany had surrendered in 1918. The symbolism was deliberate, the humiliation complete. France was divided, occupied in the north, governed from Vichy in the south. The war was not over, but France's role in it had changed forever. The surrender did not end suffering, it postponed it. It replaced open war with occupation, collaboration, and moral compromise. It preserved lives in the short term, but fractured the nation's soul. History would argue over the decision for generations. Was surrender an act of cowardice or an act of survival? What is certain is this: France's fall was sealed not only by tanks and tactics, but by a moment when fear outweighed faith, and order was chosen over uncertainty. And in that choice, the Third Republic quietly ended. France did not remember its defeat honestly. It rewrote it. After 1940, the nation faced a wound too deep to leave exposed. The collapse had been too fast, too total, too humiliating. And so, like many nations after catastrophe, France searched not for understanding, but for meaning. And meaning requires a story. During the occupation, the Vichy regime offered one explanation. France had fallen because it had been morally weak, too liberal, too divided, too modern. Defeat was framed as punishment, a cleansing collapse that justified authoritarian control and collaboration in the name of national renewal. It was a convenient narrative, and a dangerous one. After liberation in 1944, the story changed, but not necessarily toward truth. The new myth was heroic, a nation of resistors, unified in defiance, liberated from within. Collaboration was minimized. Complexity was erased. The fall of 1940 became an anomaly, an accident quickly corrected by courage. Both stories shared one purpose: to avoid the real causes. The French soldier became the scapegoat, accused of poor morale, of weakness, of surrendering without a fight. It was easier to blame the men at the front than the systems above them. Easier to accuse courage than confront doctrine, leadership, and political failure. But the evidence refused to disappear. French units fought bravely, often desperately across the country. At Stone, at Gembloux, along the Somme, resistance was fierce, casualties mounted, heroism was real. What failed was not the will to fight, but the ability to coordinate, adapt, and command. Yet heroism without direction becomes sacrifice without purpose. For decades, France avoided this conclusion. It lingered in memory, uncomfortable and unresolved. Schoolbooks simplified, films softened. The collapse was reduced to 6 weeks, as if speed alone explained it.
It did not. The truth was more unsettling. France fell because its institutions could not evolve as fast as the world around them. Because trauma from one war dictated preparation for the next. Because certainty replaced curiosity. Because order was valued more than initiative. These are not uniquely French flaws. They are human ones. As archives opened and historians returned to the documents, the old myths began to fracture. The story grew more complex and more instructive. France did not fall because it was weak, cowardly, or decadent. It fell because it believed strength was enough. The Maginot Line still stands. The archives still speak. The questions remain. In 1940, France collapsed faster than anyone thought possible, not because the enemy was unstoppable, but because certainty shattered when reality refused to comply. And that lesson echoes far beyond France. Because the greatest defeats in history rarely begin with weakness. They begin with confidence. France did not fall because it lacked power. It fell because it trusted a future that no longer existed. By the summer of 1940, the war France had imagined, slow, deliberate, predictable, was gone. In its place stood a new reality: speed without warning, decisions without permission, destruction without pause. The rules had changed. France had not. This is the part of the story that resists comfort. Because France did almost everything reasonably. It studied the last war. It honored sacrifice. It tried to protect its people. And still, it collapsed. The lesson is not that preparation is useless. It is that preparation aimed backward is lethal. France built defenses against repetition, not against transformation. Its leaders believed that if they controlled risk, war could be managed. That if chaos were contained, catastrophe could be avoided. But war is not a system you stabilize. It is a force that adapts. When that truth arrived, suddenly, violently, it shattered more than armies. It shattered certainty itself. The fall of France was not just a military defeat, it was a philosophical one. A failure to accept that survival requires discomfort, that imagination matters as much as strength, that systems built to ensure order can become prisons when the world accelerates beyond them. And here is the unsettling truth history rarely emphasizes. France did not lose because it was uniquely flawed. It lost because it was normal. Traumatized nations seek safety. Bureaucracies resist disruption. Institutions reward stability over invention. These impulses feel rational, responsible, even moral, until they aren't. France teaches us that collapse often arrives not through recklessness, but through caution taken too far. Through lessons learned so well they become unquestionable. Through confidence hardened into doctrine. In 1940, French soldiers fought bravely. Civilians endured unimaginable upheaval. The nation suffered, not from apathy, but from belief. Belief that the future would resemble the past closely enough to be controlled. It did not. And history did not forgive that mistake. After the war, France rebuilt. It recovered. It adapted. But the memory of 1940 never fully faded because it posed a question too dangerous to ignore. What if the next disaster doesn't look like the last one? That question does not belong to France alone. It belongs to every modern society that believes technology, institutions, or history itself will buy time. To every nation convinced that strength guarantees security.
to every system confident it has planned for what comes next. France reminds us that certainty is seductive and fatal, because the most dangerous moment is not when a nation is weak, it is when it is convinced it is prepared. The war France trained for never arrived. The war that came did not wait. And that is the final, uncomfortable lesson of 1940. History does not defeat you when you are ignorant. It defeats you when you are sure. And it always arrives faster than expected.
Do you think France's fall was inevitable or preventable? And more importantly, what lesson do you think modern nations still haven't learned? Leave a comment. If you want more documentaries that challenge comfortable myths, expose the decisions behind great collapses, and ask the questions history textbooks avoid, subscribe to Black Lantern History.